We want to thank everybody for tuning in again to meet the candidates. And we are honored to be able to have Nancy Coffey from District 10 here. She's an incumbent, and very happy to be able to you take the time out to come here and interview. Basically what we're trying to do is let everybody get to meet and know you. So if you don't mind, I would really like to know if you could give us background.
All right, I'd love to. Thank you for this opportunity. I've been elected, as you said, for 2 years, so this was my first term, and I had a lot of things that I worked on with county residents, so I'm just fired up to do more of that work. To give a little background about myself, though, I retired after working about 2 years ago, so right after I retired, I was elected as a county board supervisor, so I got right into it. And I worked with UW Extension for 25 years, being the food-wise coordinator. So that is SNAP-Ed, Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Education Program Coordinator. So I worked with people who in Wisconsin is called food-wise. Some people would call food stamps, and helped people to think about how to wisely use the money that they got through food share to be able to then use that money and have health for their families. So I also partnered with a number of private and public community groups. So I was a county employee as the food-wise coordinator, and also worked with community partners. And one of the biggest projects we worked on was called Market Match. And Market Match is still running at the Eau Claire Downtown Farmers Market, and it's a double bucks program, so it helps people to double their dollars at the farmers market. And we know we want people to eat more local food. That helps our environment.
That helps everything.
And we also have a wonderful, wonderful group of Hmong vendors at our farmers market. And we then gave them more opportunity to make more money. Okay. So the way the Double Bucks program works is for every $10 that people spent with their food share card, they got an additional $10 for food to spend at the market through token program. And then those tokens were used. They could buy product at the market. So it helped people a lot to have healthier food. And this money all came through private donations. There was not government money for this. So we have a lot of private support in our community to keep people being healthier. So I also, in my career, learned, because I was a county employee, learned about a lot of the employees that work in the county. 25 years is a lot of time to be able to meet a lot of county employees. And I really think we have an amazing county employee group, very hardworking folks who really care, and it's been a joy to be able to continue that work with those county employees to move projects forward and have very strong collaboration skills. Besides my career, I also have volunteered with 4-H. And in the public schools, and helped with my husband to raise 3 daughters, a daughter and then later twins. For 34 years we've lived in the Eau Claire community. So this has helped me a lot to have a breadth of experience about Eau Claire and how Eau Claire are loving people who have really grabbed by the horns movement in our community, which I'm just very thrilled about the things we've been accomplishing lately.
That's great. Being that you are an incumbent, what committees did you sit on the county board?
That's a good question. So when I first started, I was with Planning and Development, which is a standing committee, and also the Highway Committee, and then Groundwater Committee, which is a smaller committee group. And then when we had a new person come in who could not go right on to administration or financial, I gave up the Highway Committee, but learned a lot while I was on there. And so I did have a chance to get a feel for what our roads are about, which we drive on and don't always know a whole lot about.
Okay, so did you take on another committee then?
So no, because of the needs of the new member,
Okay.
Everyone needs to be on at least one standing committee.
Okay.
So, no, and I've learned a real lot about planning and development and groundwater, and one of my biggest concerns is climate change and the environment, so that really fit very perfectly with the changes that I wanted to work on.
Okay. One of the things that I became knowledgeable about was the fact that people who start in this kind of public service, you don't really know what it's all about until you're there. Can you tell me some of the things that you learned that were more in depth and detailed than you thought?
I think the biggest thing for many people, and being retired has been such a gift for me because I have time compared to many people who are working as supervisors and have a full-time position as well, and my children are grown, so it gives me more time. But the time it takes to do all the reading and to talk to staff to make sure you're understanding what you're reading, because I think it's imperative that we all research very well as our job as policymakers. If we don't understand the issues and we're making decisions, that doesn't work very well. We really need to be as informed as we can. And other supervisors have been great mentors as well in that development of knowledge, and are very, very willing to share as long as we have the time to meet with them and talk about the issues. So I think that time and reading and being open to ideas that you maybe hadn't thought of before, because we do have some supervisors that have been with us for a very long time, and I respect that breadth of knowledge that they bring to us as we move forward in our decisions.
Being that you have had an opportunity to live this life of a county supervisor, if you're reelected, what are the three things that you feel are so important for you to make movement on and help your constituents understand how important they are?
So there are two things as a county board supervisors that we need to keep in mind. First of all, we're elected by our district, and my district is District 10, which is City of Eau Claire residents as well as Town of Washington residents.
Oh, okay.
So balancing that rural and city piece is very important, I think, and because of that, the three things that I think are driving my values the most are integrity of rural land use. So that is why planning and development fit my genre really well, because I think we're balancing having good farms and strong farms and rural residents who want to live in the country and yet can't always afford the 5-acre plot that in the past we were having in order to make sure that we had secure water quality. So what's happening now more is that people who are living in the rural area are having smaller lots. Now, as we do that, we have to worry about wells and septic systems.
Oh, yeah.
So I think it's really, really important that we keep our eye on that and make sure, because if we get too far out, we can't just next people to the city so they get city water. So we want everybody to make sure that if they buy into that lifestyle and have a smaller lot, that we may have to think about having more of a group cooperative type of well and water, or at least septic systems. So to be able, we certainly don't want, like has happened in some places in Wisconsin, where people are drinking animal manure or human manure. That is not where we want to be.
Not at all.
So one of my jobs that I feel is making sure that integrity of keeping our rural farms, because we need food and we need to be able to keep that food viable for our people. And we also want people to enjoy their rural living when they live in the country.
Oh, yeah.
The other thing is safe roads and bike paths. So we need to get most of us who live in a rural area work in the city. So getting back and forth, and our roads in Wisconsin had always been stellar. In the last 10 years, that has not been so. And so there's something called a PACER score, which I learned when I was in the highway department for a short time. And basically that's the quality of the roads, and it's an average of the quality of those roads that we're driving on. And we all know roads in our county that could use some improvement. So now, because of the vehicle registration fee, which even though I was really reluctant to vote for that, I did, and so did way more than half of the county supervisors. The reason that we were forced to vote for that vehicle registration fee was to keep the quality of our roads, because if we don't, it's just like our houses. If we don't maintain our houses, it's even more expensive to fix them, right?
Yeah.
And most of us do not, me included, do not want to go back to gravel roads. It is not, and all the dust that it brings into our houses, right, as we drive past. So until the state is able to provide more to our county roads and our state roads, we have to do something. And that's, with time, what most of the supervisors decided was the only way that we could manage that, especially with the debt that we have now. The third one, and as one is at the heart of our budget problems, is the proactive drug abuse action that we need to be taking. As the meth and opioid epidemic has hit Eau Claire County, just like most of the counties throughout the whole United States, it has made it so expensive for our county services that we have had budget overruns through our county. And this is something that is not sustainable, and unless we get this under control, we are going to be in a very difficult situation financially, as are many counties. So to me, the way we have to move forward on this is to keep our drug treatment centers, our treatment programs going. And also, we are working to have more mental health initiatives, both through Human Services and in our county jail. That has helped, and right now, in the last year, our county jail, people that were incarcerated into our county jails, it has lessened. And if we can keep that happening, that will help our budget, both for our biggest hits, where our Human Services and our county sheriff department.
So in saying that, when it comes down to you as the county supervisor for your district, when it comes down to making the hard choices on cuts and stuff, what kinds of things what kind of mandates get in the way of you being able to look at different items that you feel, how do I cut that? It's a mandate, how do you do that? What kinds of things do get in the way on that?
Mandates are difficult, as you said, because one thing about the county that's different than the city, we are told by the state what we have to do, and sometimes given money and sometimes not given money. And so, therefore, the question then becomes, do you do the mandate but not do it as well? right?
Yeah.
And my worry about that is that if there, for example, if there is a family where there is meth or opioids, and especially meth, where the children, the situation is very toxic.
Mhm.
Imagine being a 3-year-old and you're in a meth home, and when the police come in and bust that situation and Human Services helps to bring the children out of that situation, you can't take your blanket, you can't take your toy, you know, how
Yeah.
difficult that must be. And how do we then help that child so that they don't end up in 10 or 15 years ending up in our incarceration system? So to me, even though I know it's costly,
Mhm.
I think that we have to really put money into these programs to be able to help our parents be good parents
Mhm.
and help our children to feel like they're loved and secure, and they won't end up in the jail system because we haven't helped them to be successful. So that doesn't directly answer the question. There's still this problem of not enough money and too many places. So I think with the initiatives with the drug courts and the treatment courts and the health initiatives that, and the foster systems where we're trying to have the children go into a situation where they're still with family members, maybe it be it an uncle, aunt, grandma, grandpa, if they're able, that we can try to keep our children safe and reduce costs.
Thank you very much for that. In looking at the countywide issues and thinking of, you know, those kinds of things that are facing you, how did you describe to your constituents that there may be some things that have to be cut, but we, you know, how do you provide to them to say, what do you want to take away? You know, I know that that's probably one of the biggest things that each and every one of you have to do. How do you communicate that to your constituents?
I think the biggest thing to help people understand is right now we are bonding or borrowing for 30% of our total budget. And basically the county policy has been that we will not go over that 30%. So if through the programs we are providing, hopefully costs will decrease for Human Services, decrease for our county jail because we will have less people, so that we will be able to balance that. So if that doesn't happen, we will have some very hard conversations about, as staff leave, I would hope we would not have to have staff not, you know, be no longer with us, that as people retire, we maybe would have to put more things together. I worry about morale when that happens, because people can only work so many hours, and they, you know, we can always work smarter, but I think we're to that point where we have very, very experienced workers in most cases, and so they're working pretty smart because they've learned how to do it the best they can. I think the other thing is that right now, Governor Tony Evers has said to us that we have some budget overflow in the state. And I love what he's saying about our public schools, because I do think that they've taken a hit that's been very, very difficult. And I would encourage our residents also to call their legislators and the governor and ask for some of that money to go back to Human Services and to our transportation fund to help our roads, as we would be able to get some of that money back, just like the public schools were promised more money and it's been diminished and diminished and diminished. as we're able to do that, if that's possible, that's another avenue to be proactive as residents and help people understand that just of me calling a legislator in the state, if we all do that, it will be much more powerful.
What are, in part of what we do here is also try to find ways to help educate people about what not only what the government is, but also about what it takes to be a county supervisor. Tell me, how would you explain the taxes that property taxes that are paid? How would you explain to your constituents exactly how that money is divided up? Because I don't know if everybody knows how that's done.
Well, we have a 4% levy in our county government, and that money then, to be honest, that isn't my forte. So
Okay,
I don't know exactly how all this works, to be honest, but I do know that our 4% is much lower than it is in many counties.
Oh.
And part of that was because we were so fiscally responsible, which is a good thing, but once it's frozen, the only way that tax levy can be now increased is to go to referendum.
Oh, okay.
Or for, again, the state to release that freeze.
Okay.
So we're in a difficult situation in that way. I think that people sometimes don't understand. We're always so wanting our taxes to go down, and we don't realize that if our taxes go down at the state and we're not giving money to the counties, and the counties have to add things like vehicle registration fees and doing less services, and our roads fall apart, then how have we helped, right? So we have to see a little bit bigger picture, that we all want these services and the money has to come from somewhere.
I think that's a very good explanation, and so I just wanted to let you know that the conundrum that I always see is the fact that paying less always seems like a nice thing to have, but what do I have to give up for that to happen? And I think what I like is that your explanation of you have to give up something if you have to keep going down that road.
Right.
So, when elected, if re-elected, and moving forward, what kind of situations do you foresee that the county will have to do some different kinds of directives or compromises in order to complete the job that not only you're comfortable with as a supervisor, but also that your constituents would be understanding that these are the harder decisions that you have to make?
I think one of the things that I'm very proud of is that I worked with several community residents, and we got the CAFO moratorium passed for Eau Claire County, which is the concentrated animal feeding operations, basically large farm operations. And the group that worked on this moratorium was farmers and educators, residents. And what was so wonderful about this is that they all saw the importance of keeping our standards up for water quality and local control. So we have a lot more local control rather than the DNR, who have been underfunded for so long, and it's just hard for them to get to all the places they need to be. So that local control has been very helpful. I also actively support the 100% carbon neutrality for 2050, and so that is one thing that we need to keep working on. Through the county, we now have all the LED lights in the courthouse, and it seems like a small thing, but if you put all LED lights in your house, it's very expensive. Now multiply that by a big county
Yeah.
building. So I think all of those kinds of things have been important that we have done. The 7 Mile landfill is something that we are going to have to keep thinking about. I understand it's privately owned, and we have county residents who live very close to that landfill and rightfully are very concerned about living near that landfill and what's going to happen after the 40% increase in the size. If that's approved, then what happens?
Okay.
Because we all have garbage, and where is it going to
Yeah.
go? And none of us want it in our backyard. So I think that's one of the big issues. I think the other big issue is human services and the opioid and meth epidemic, and how we stay on top of that epidemic to get programs to help our families and keep the costs as minimal as we possibly can. So we will have to be keeping our eye on what's going on with the budget for human services, not because we don't trust the employees,
No.
because it's just a big, big part of our budget, and anything that is complicated and has a lot of pieces to it, we just have to keep looking at ways that we can maybe diminish those funds and help them to be able to document, because one of the difficulties they have in these mandated programs is sometimes they're not paid back for these programs from 12 to 18 months after the incurring the cost. So it becomes a cash flow problem. So that's something that we also have to keep track of, is how do we keep making sure that we have enough cash to pay all the things that have to be paid for on a monthly basis. And again, can the state help us so that that lapse between incurring the cost and getting the money back is not so great?
That's very true. Tell me about some of the other things that you feel are very important for your constituents and new people to the area that you've done for them, or what you'd like to tell them about why you feel they should vote for you.
Okay, thank you. So for District 10, as I said, we have many city and county and county residents, so that makes it a little more complicated, right, to make everybody happy. So I think the main thing is transparency. I think that it's really important, and I do have a Facebook page, Nancy Coffey County Board.
Okay.
So I would hope that people would visit that Facebook page. I try to keep them up on what's going on in the county and things that I see as issues, and if people are interested and would be willing to give information, and it doesn't just have to be District 10 residents.
Yeah.
Once you're elected, my job is to help everyone in the county.
Exactly.
So the election part is more specific, and I think the main thing for those in our district is the issue of water quality and and roads, and maintaining a budget that is stable for our county.
So I appreciate all that you're doing here. I would like to know kind of your last chance to let your constituents know who you are and what you stand for, and exactly what you're going to bring to the table to have them vote for you.
All right, thank you. So the mission of Eau Claire County is to provide quality, innovative, and cost-effective services that safeguard and enhance the well-being of our residents and our resources. So in a nutshell, that is the job that every county supervisor brings. So I think in order to be there for your residents, we need to be available to them, to listen to them. If a resident has a question, I would hope that they would email me or call me. I had a resident who was very worried about a towing situation and met with me, and we're still working on that with the administration to see if we can get something that is more a contract with towing agencies so that the costs are more streamlined and people are knowing what the cost will be ahead of time, and I'm sure that's an issue that the city residents are very, especially as we have a lot of snow.
Yeah.
So I think my biggest thing is just being available to people and trying to have people know more about county government, because often, and I was probably just like, I know I was just like this before I became part of it, I didn't really know exactly what the city did versus what the county does. And now I have a better feeling for that. So if people want to meet and talk about it, I just really think that it would be helpful. And wanting to be open to everyone's ideas and perspectives, because if we haven't walked in someone's shoes, just like with this towing situation, I had not gone through that, and it was like, oh my gosh, that is a problem, and I wasn't aware of it. So I think just being open to things that are going on that I could learn more about, and that I can then be the incumbent who listens to people and has a little more background to be able to bring more knowledge to the table.
Thank you so much, because I think the things that we're all looking for is that in whatever candidates that they are listening to our general public and the people they represent. Overall, I think the best thing that I would like everybody to know is this is an opportunity that we all have as a responsibility to vote. So please do.
Yes.
And I wish you the best of luck.
Oh, thank you. April 7th. So make sure that you vote on April 7th. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you.